Minister Chris Hartcher, welcome to Business Insider. Thank you for your time. Goodness, we've been chasing you for a while.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. Wednesday night, a good turnout at the strategy session for the state government.
Yep, we had a major planning for the Central Coast last Wednesday night at Mingara Club. Something like 200 people were there. We had every senior public servant on the coast. We had all the members of Parliament, all the state members of Parliament on the coast. We had the Mayor of Gosford. And the idea was to split people up into tables and ask them what are the priorities that they see, the key priorities for the coast, for the first part of the session, and then for the second part of the session, how they would see those priorities actually actioned. It's all very well to have an aspiration, but you've got to have then how you're going to implement that aspiration. What impressed me was the calibre of the people. There was a wide range representing all sorts of areas of interest on the coast, from agriculture right down to people with disabled children, right down to business, right down to law and order, right down to transport users. It was every aspect that brings the coast together. And they were there, members of Parliament all circulated from each table. At the end, we brought it all together, and I'll take that forward now as part of the Central Coast.
What is the timing on that, Chris?
Well, what this is that this is for us to develop our plan now for the next 3 years. We've had the first year in government where we think we've achieved a number of the milestones for the Central Coast. Now we want to work forward for the next 3 years. We've got our plans, but we need to feed into that what the community is saying. After all, there's not much point having wonderful ideas in government unless the community think, yeah, we support that, we back it. Now, a lot of them are very self-evident. Always the biggest one on the Central Coast is jobs. Second biggest one on the Central Coast is roads.
Okay. Can we come back to those,
sure,
because I want to pursue both
very
of those.
Important ones.
The milestones that we've got for the coast over the last 12 months, what sticks in your mind there as the deliveries?
Look, can I be so bold as to say this, which is something which isn't featured on the media, and the reason it's not featured on the media is because it's a negative rather than a positive, is the absence of scandal. We had, and at a state level, right throughout the community.
Is this a measurable objective?
It is a measurable objective,
okay,
because we are very determined that all the scandals, all the allegations of corruption will go. Now, unfortunately, we're still hit with that problem on the Central Coast in relation to the federal level of representation, but we're determined to actually make sure that people have trust. The restoration of trust in government has got to be a primary aim of government. Now, that's been the first objective, but as I say, people don't write that, and how can you write it? Secondly, it's been to actually bring together those aspects of the coast that need attention, and we've done it right across the board. Agriculture, we've not walked away from the coast. We've developed a $6 million agricultural centre at the Ourimbah campus. Right? People think, hey, agriculture is still an important part of the coast. It's got to be looked after. We've increased the number of police. There's 32 extra police came. More will be coming after the May intake. Last Monday, with the other members, I welcomed 97 new nurses. We've got a magnificent hospital, legacy of the previous government, full marks to them, but it wasn't able to give the services that people were asking for because of the lack of trained staff. 97 new nurses moving in. The new Wyong Emergency Department underway, the new Wyong Maternity Unit underway. Today, with the Prime Minister, pouring the Central Coast Regional Cancer Centre, which everybody's been begging for years. Since 1996, been on the drawing boards. We came in and said it's going ahead. October, we announced it. Now we did the first pour. It's actually happening. So that's in the area of health. In the area of transport, 2 weeks ago, 33,000 new seats for commuters, quiet carriages for commuters. Excuse me, the new express trains coming for commuters next year. On jobs, we've got the job action plan for New South Wales. I mean, that's caught up in a number of issues, but we're working on achieving them. We're working on trying to make sure that we attract, as you have through this communication forum, the idea of promoting business opportunities for the Central Coast.
Every time you get halfway through a sentence, I think of 4 more questions, so just bear with me while I float around. That economic imperative, the jobs for the coast, was a very common theme around the tables I visited and heard from on Wednesday night. We have the landing and the Central Coast Regional Development Corporation working on a couple of sites. The landing, we ran a forum, was the unanimous choice, independent of where the business leaders were from, whether it was the business chambers or the RDA or even past members of Parliament. They all recommend and have the support of their constituents for the landing. Where is that up to now?
The landing is now with the council have given their endorsement to stage 1 and expressed some concerns about stages 2 and 3. The government has allocated money. There's a $5 million just basic grant to the Central Coast Regional Development Corporation. The government's set up.
Is that specifically for the landing?
Yes,
or
it's
is
specifically for the work of the Central Coast Regional Development Corporation. Right. We've got the staff, we've got excellent board of directors, a very competent chairman. We've got a temporary, we unfortunately lost a CEO, but we've now got a good temporary CEO in there. I've met with the Minister as recently as last week with the member for Gosford. We are now working at getting stage 1 up, and we're doing it unlike any other plan. We've actually got the private sector involved. Every other plan has just been government ideas, maps, people talking about it, making speeches, doing little three-dimensionals, and then walking away. We've now got Lendlease, who are working with the government on the delivery of Barangaroo. That's what it's actually called, Barangaroo Delivery, down in Sydney. And this is the second project working with the government, the Gosford Landing. Not as big as Barangaroo. Barangaroo is huge. But this is also a big one. And Lendlease are tied into both of them and tied into the same concept of both of them.
It is about commercialisation.
It's commercialisation. It has to be. How else can it run? We want residential development. We want the marina.
Well, we need, don't we, residential to make it commercial, I'm presuming.
We do, but it's got to be attractive commercial development. And it's got to be commercial development that relates to waterfront usage, because you are going to charge a fair price. These are not going to be cheap. They're not going to be cheap. Unfortunately, we'd all like to have, I'd like to have a lovely waterfront unit. I'm not going to be able to afford one. But there is a market for them, and that is going to fund, all the money from that is going to fund the actual development of it. We've made the decision on the relocation of the school, which is a huge site. We've taken a certain degree of political heat over that. We acknowledge that, but we are going to carry that forward. The problem has always been in the past that people had plans but were not prepared to follow it through with the decisions. With the commercial operator, with the relocation of the school, with the actual development of stage 1, are all proceeding, and I would expect that, notwithstanding that all governments are caught up now in the financial situation, that once we get the final closure on stage 1, it's going to go ahead. There are still some concerns about access to the water, access to the waterfront. Well, they've got to be worked out. People will still have full access to the waterfront.
Yeah, and that is clear. And in actual fact, from a very personal point of view, they'll have better access because it will have parking there. It will be it will have precincts that you can actually go and enjoy the water. Free land, yes, but also facilities, restaurants and cafes. And
if we do it right, it's going to be magnificent. It'll be as good. I don't know if people have seen Kings Park over in Perth. It'll be as good as something like that. Absolutely magnificent. And everybody's dreamed of this for years. Well, hopefully now they will see the dream eventually come true. It's over a 10-year program, of course.
Absolutely.
But stage 1...
It ties so specifically into the regeneration of economic activity as well.
Yep, it does. It does, both for the coast and for Gosford. Gosford has been, for the last 20 years, a dying town. Nobody really wanted to go there. You couldn't park there, you couldn't get in there, it was narrow, it was unattractive. Erina just has
eclipsed
it massively, just as Tuggerah has massively eclipsed Wyong. And it was for the same reasons: poor planning, poor presentation, poor involvement by council and by government on addressing traffic issues, so that you had new urban centres spring up which were really unintended.
Well, while we stay at that end of the coast, we've got Warner Vale, we've got it waiting for a link road or an intersection, as I understand it. I didn't get the opportunity to ask the Secretary for Transport, or Roads, I should think it was on Wednesday night. Where are we with that? For the sake of, and it's easy for me to say, $8 to $10 million.
It is.
Where are we on that?
This afternoon at 3 o'clock, that's what we're meeting on.
Okay.
With the Central Coast Regional Coordination and with the RTA, or the RMS as it's called now. It's getting that $8 million. The local member there has been super enthusiastic about it, as is the council. I think we've got a plan to get it. Look, it's I know people say, well, why can't governments find the $8 million? Well, governments are sore strapped, as we all know. It took ages to get that $10 million that we put in for the Regional Cancer Centre, for example. Had to fight like mad to try and get that. But we are going to get that $8 million. We are going to get that link road, which is so important for the Warner Vale development, and we're going to proceed with it. It's as much as our plan as is the Gosford Landing.
Yeah. While we're crisscrossing the coast, we'll come back to your electorate. It has been a difficult 12 months in terms of you, because I hear from our clients and your clients, your electorates, that Chris has been difficult, almost impossible to catch. What's going to happen in the future?
Well, is that a fair criticism?
I'm not suggesting it. It's the first year of government after a couple of years in. It's not meant to be.
I'm here on weekends. I go to everything that I can on weekends. I can't get to events during the week, and that's what you're talking about, I know. That's where the problem lies. What I do is I reserve every second Friday to see constituents. For this morning, I had the opening of the Regional Cancer Centre, then I had the Russ Bus and Train Union with their members concerned who live on the coast about transit operations. Then this afternoon, of course, we've got that meeting to plan Warner Vale. After I finish with you, I'm seeing 2 more people. So I am here. I'm not as visible as I was.
You were, indeed.
In the media. That's true. And I'm not probably as accessible in the sense as I was Monday to Thursday. That's part of the problem with being a minister. I've got a huge portfolio.
You've got a massive portfolio.
I've got the resources of this state are enormous, and unless we develop them sensibly, we're going to miss out. Western Australia and Queensland are streets ahead of us in where they're going. They're getting billions of dollars, literally, to fuel their infrastructure, to fuel their schools, hospitals, roads. We need to get it, but we've got to get it sensibly.
But see, if I was setting your priorities, and call me Barry if you want, but I'd say, okay, let's use Chris Hartcher for resources, because there is probably, other than health and law and order, there's probably not a bigger question hanging over the state, as was raised on Wednesday night with the agricultural people there. I'd put you in there and say, okay, well, how do we manage the Central Coast? You know, do we need, and it's close to your heart, and I think an election promise, as Chris Hartcher said, I want to be the Minister for the Central Coast. Do we need to, okay, I'm Barry, take a secretary for the Central Coast?
Or should we have a separate Minister for the Central Coast? Look, we're aware of that. The other ministers, like Barry's Minister for Western Sydney, and it's very difficult for him to do as much in Western Sydney as he wants to do. We're conscious of that. Look, if Chris Hartcher is going to do an effective job in resources and then do an effective job in energy, which is also huge with the whole electricity
and you have
issue.
a
special Minister of State, which has a number of special sections to it. Is he going to be effective as Minister of Central Coast? I think that's got to be worked through. I think clearly, and I think you've been kind enough to say so, the first year was going to be a bit of a testing period. Well, we will have to see how we're going about midway, about this time next year, as to whether the Central Coast is actually getting a fair shake. What was that phrase Kevin Rudd used to use? A fair shake of the sauce bottle.
There is only so much sauce in the bottle. There is comment on the case that we're not getting our fair share of the sauce.
We're actually doing very well.
Are we?
When you compare it. Look, we could always do more. Every area.
Is it proportional? Do you look at the state and say, well, 320,000 people, this is how much you get?
We're actually getting a good proportion in the roads budget, for example. We're getting that, the Central Coast Highway, which is unfortunately stalled a bit at the moment with the difficulties facing the principal contractor, but it'll go ahead. That's a huge project. That's well over $100 million. We've got $93 million that was allocated that will actually be spent. There was talk of allocation on the previous government, was never actually spent. We've got the $18 million that was announced just last Friday by the Premier for the Tuggerah F3 turnoff. We've got the program for Wyong Road. There's good money going to roads. There's good money going into the hospital. There's 97 nurses, the regional cancer centre. There's money going to agriculture. There's money going into education generally. There's extra police, money going to extra police. We are doing good. Look, we could always do better.
Can we do better?
We could always do better.
Where are your priorities? When you look at that, what will make Chris Hartcher smile in 3 years' time to say, we have done this?
Look, I suppose the happiest thing for me is going to be the roads. I have to use the roads constantly. You have to use the roads constantly. Every one of your clients has to use the roads constantly. We want a good road system. We've got a narrow topography. We've only got a certain number of major roads, which we can't expand upon. We can't develop more access to them. We have to widen them, upgrade them. Yeah, that's a key priority for me. The other one I've always had a passion about, which may not be on your radar screen too, is apprenticeships. I am constantly on the mining companies, constantly on the energy companies, come into my portfolio on apprenticeship programs. I launched a new apprenticeship program just 2 weeks ago. I was with people yesterday working on new apprenticeship programs. That's what we want on the coast. More apprenticeships for tradesmen.
Why aren't they coming here then, Chris?
Well, because there's better money elsewhere. That's the problem.
Not too far, yeah.
It's not too far. It's the same with the mining industry. As soon as you get good people, really good people, they're ending up in West Australia and Queensland.
Can we talk about something, because on Wednesday night you made a fairly unequivocal statement about the Korean mine and its potential to operate.
Unequivocal.
Unequivocal.
Unequivocal, absolutely,
yes.
Unequivocal. That we are going to absolutely protect the Central Coast water catchment, and I've made that very clear in the Parliament, as I said, and I've made that very clear to the company involved. The company involved sent out their top people from Korea to sit around the table with me, and I brought the members of Parliament in so that they could hear it too, and I said, you guys might as well know now.
If they have they got the opportunity to prove that they won't affect the water table?
How are they going to do that?
I don't know, but
how are they going to do that? I mean, it's look, as I said some months ago, and it caused a bit of controversy at the time, I can't stop people applying to buy the Harbour Bridge, but that doesn't mean the government's going to sell them the Harbour Bridge. I can't stop, in a free enterprise economy, people making applications, but I can let them know that essentially, you know, it's not going to turn out the way you want it to, because this government is going to protect its water.
On Wednesday this week, I think the Minister for Local Government talked about setting up a committee to review amalgamation or regionalisation. We only have one wish, and that is that it happen here first. What's your position on that?
Well, actually the Central Coast for a while was being looked at as the best pilot, because we were hoping that Wyong and Gosford councils would cooperate. The reason being that, unlike any other area in the state, the two councils have had to cooperate through the Water Corporation. They've had to run a joint function through water. They've done that successfully. It works far better with the one than with two separate bodies. We can all see the benefit of that. So there's been the aspiration that the two councils will work together more. That's certainly what we want to do, and we'd very much like it if the two councils would cooperate and get involved as a pilot project for all of New South Wales, one Central Coast Regional Council. But we've got to work with the two councils to do that. Now there's some good people on the councils on all political sides. This isn't one political party. On all political sides who can see that, but there are others who think, oh...
I've got to say, under another iteration, I'm involved in a discussion between the two councils on this specific area, and I've got to say they are embracing it enthusiastically. There is still the difficulty, people call it an invisible line, but it's a very solid line between Gosford and Wyong. It would free the whole thing up if we did have a directive from the government to say, okay, well, this is going to happen, as they did in Queensland. Will that? Do you think that will happen, or
No.
I guess it's crystal ball stuff?
The government's position, no, it's not crystal ball. The government's position was clear. It would not force it. And it would only do it with the will of the communities. But what we want to do is to get the communities telling their councils, bring it together. And as I say, there are good people in both councils who are keen to bring it together. But there are some people who are just looking at their own position and think, I can get elected in Wyong or in Gosford, but I can't get elected Central Coast wide. And therefore they're the people who are acting as the flies in the ointment. Look, the state government will facilitate it, it will financially assist it, it will bring the services together as it has done with water, but what it's not going to do is wield an axe.
Yeah, okay. If we can come back and talk, everyone talks about infrastructure, and we need better infrastructure, and that could be the water, or it could be roads, and I think the roads, the fundamental paving is important, but the transport that runs around on top of that, we desperately need more effective, I think, public transport, whether it be roads or light rail, or is there scope or vision for that?
Well, there is. There'll be no government bus service here. We've ruled that out. There are two good private operators. It's a market. The private operators will run buses everywhere if people are prepared to catch them. This is, I know it's the chicken and the egg. How do you know if people are prepared to catch them unless you actually run the buses? But there have been a number of, I've been working on this one for years, since I first came in back in 1988. And I remember sitting down with the then bus companies, they're different ownership and names now, but working on various routes, which they did at my request, trial out for 3-month periods. But I remember them coming back to me and saying, well, look, we're getting 2 people, 3 people catching it. Everybody likes to have a bus there, but if they're not going to use it, so we're happy to keep working on it, but it's got to be something that...
It's got to be populated.
It's got to be popular. The public, after all, are the customers, and they're the ones who have to be prepared to catch the bus.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would you like to say about the last 12 months?
Look, what I want to talk about is this. I think the people of the Central Coast 1 year ago made a big decision. They made a decision that they would have one party only represent them at a state level. That's unique in the whole history of the coast. Up until now, it's always been politically divided. And that decision was made on a number of bases, in my opinion, getting around the community. One was the trust in government. It was probably the biggest single factor. It's not something you can measure in financial terms.
You're talking to someone who embraces the theory that governments lose it, and that government lost it, didn't they?
Absolutely.
So you were right place, right time.
But more than just losing and changing the guard is the idea that the element of trust in government had to be restored, and the standards of politics had to be restored. Secondly, there has to be a focus of attention on the coast as a region. People have always talked about that. There is far greater focus on the coast as a region now, because it's got all its members. When a minister is confronted with an issue, all of us are in there together. All of us are saying, it's not as though, well, it's just here. It's everybody in there, everybody focused on it. And we've got now a regional office and a regional minister. I mean, we've always had that, and a regional development corporation, but all focused on actually getting attention to the coast. So I think there has been a very marked improvement, I believe, in the last 12 months.
REDES, we've run a headline in Business Insider, Chris, that said REDES is dead. Almost immediately after that, it was explained to us that in actual fact it's not dead, and it's alive and well, and you meet and review under your ministry that document on a 6-monthly basis. Can we share? Do we need to ask to share that, or can you share bits of it? Or
I'm not actually sure how the structure operates. I've only chaired the one meeting. I'm chairing another one soon, and what I've done is developed an actual timetable. What I'd very much appreciate you're doing is putting a request to REDES for a greater connection and information flow, and I can put that to the REDES committee. I'm only the chairman. I'm not the committee. But if you're happy to do that, I'm happy to facilitate. The whole idea of having these things is, after all, with organisations like your own, who do communicate more complex issues than the mainstream media can communicate, that people who are interested are aware of it. That was like last Wednesday night's forum. I mean, there's 350,000 people on the coast. There were 200 or so at that forum, but they're the people who actually have a special interest, or they're the people who actually are involved in planning and development for the coast. So they're the people whom we really need to communicate with, just as we communicate with organisations like your own.
Well, it's such and our organisation, Business Insider, is about breaking down those silos. And you would know better than me. On the Central Coast, we get into closed communities, and we don't stick our heads out to see what else is happening sometimes.
No.
So that's our purpose, is not to get people to stick their heads out, but to break the walls down. And we are fans of RDA, Regional Development Australia. We've got a new chairman there. We're looking forward to their interaction across all governments. So,
well, that's a joint federal-state initiative.
Yes.
And that's now underway. It's got, as you say, a good chairman. It's got who's been very connected with the NBN rollout, which is an enormous significance both nationally and for the Central Coast. The people on it have got high levels of experience, same as Central Coast Regional Development Corporation and the Central Coast Area Health Board. We've now got, one of the points I didn't make earlier, we've now got, at long last, our own Area Health Board, which we lost years ago when we were merged into North Shore, and all the money was going down to Royal North Shore Hospital.
Indeed.
Right, now we've got our own one. That's one of the reasons why we're now getting our Regional Cancer Centre. There is the benefit of having a proper regionalisation program, and that's what REDES is designed to do, that's what the RDA is designed to do, the Regional Development Corporation is designed to do, and that's what we're doing. And people see that benefit. The first benefit already with the Regional Cancer Centre, because the money isn't all being siphoned off to Royal North Shore. Wonderful hospital that it is, but it never was particularly keen to see us have the Cancer Treatment Centre because it was offering that facility.
You raised also the idea of accountability, and I'm not sure of the term, but there is a way that, and this isn't targeting you, please, but if a member of Parliament's not, and at the state level only, as I understand it, he's not delivering on accountables, then there is a system going to be put in place by the government of New South Wales that they can be called to account. Is
what I was talking about at the forum is that the government has a policy of, and we've set up a group to look at this, of modelling the American recall system. I think the best example of that was Arnold Schwarzenegger, when the governor of California was seen by the people of California not to be performing, and they voted him out and they voted Arnold in. They recalled the governor. It's called recall. Now, how that would operate within the Westminster system, we have a slightly different system in the United States. We have an executive-based system. We have a Westminster system, the same as the United Kingdom. That's what we have to work through. We've actually got that underway.
See, I think that's an exciting decision.
It is. You have to do it in a way, though, that it doesn't create ongoing instability, because after all, people want stable governments. They don't want elections every 6 months. But you also have to go in a way that people understand that the government that they've elected is going to be properly accountable to them. At the end of the day, trust and accountability are the fundamentals.
Absolutely.
Good to
Minister,
talk to you, Mark.
thank you. We really appreciate your time.
Pleasure to come.